Hey guys, welcome back. So with jumping back into Carnage Reigns for part 4 and 5, we now see Normie Osborn step into the fight as the Red Goblin, though he's really still trying to figure out what name to go by. But now with him getting involved, he's gonna try and see if his new unique symbiote power is gonna be enough to chime in and save the day. So let's get into it. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week. And don't forget to hit that bell up top to get all notifications so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so jumping back into Carnage Reigns, where this time Cletus Cassidy's used the Symbiote infused Stark Sentinel to expand his Grendel abilities through the internet so that he can possess a larger number of people than what we've seen so far at Todd's Diner and with Kenneth Neely. But before we see this carried out, we're also shown that there's a few Cletus Cassidy stands who are online talking to each other on some sort of forum or thread, and they've been following the recent news of what's been going on with Cletus Cassidy since the massacre at Todd's Diner. And now with Cassidy connected to the web, he's starting to send out video calls that allow him to control people, which is something that these guys were made aware of, with calls going out to people nearby them. Though at this point, none of these guys have received the call, which causes them to speculate for a moment as far as why Cassidy's doing this, and one of them takes a guess that it's probably because Cassidy wants to eat them, only for another one to respond that he's actually okay with that, which is wild. But from here, we then head over to Liz Allen's apartment, where we find Cassidy trying to reach out to her while using Flash Thompson's name on the caller ID to make sure that she picks up, but instead the phone's answered by her stepson, Stanley Osborn, who's the son of the clone of Harry Osborn and Lily Hollister. And as soon as Cassidy gets Stanley on the phone, he tells Stanley to put the phone up good and close to his ear so that he could tell him the most biggest epic secret in the whole wide world, which of course, like we were told, this is just Cassidy's new method of controlling others by way of video call. So next he gets Stanley to grab a Chucky-sized knife and go after Liz while she's taking a bubble bath with her earbuds in, which is why she can't hear him come in or nothing like that. But fortunately, Normie's able to step in and stop the mind-controlled Stanley from sending Liz to the upper room. And right away, Cassidy sees Normie and he brings up his past as Goblin Child, as well as his current situation with Normie recently becoming the Red Goblin, which are all videos that I have linked down in the comments below, starting with Norman Osborn still in the Carnage Symbiote, as well as Dark Web and the current Venom series, because through the course of these events, Dylan gave Normie this symbiote so that he could help Dylan in the upcoming Symbiote War, which is still a ways down the line. And with Normie getting the symbiote, he named it Rascal, but he's still learning how to handle its unique abilities. And now, with Normie seeing that they have to deal with Cletus Cassidy, he's not exactly sure if they're up to the task. And right now, Cletus, he's trying to get Normie to look at the phone so that he can be the next puppet, only for a sudden explosion to then go off outside, showing Normie and Rascal that Cletus Cassidy is already taking control of a large number of civilians in the area, which from here seamlessly takes us back over to the Cape Killers, who are trying to contain these mind-controlled people within the area without using any lethal methods, which is kinda hard for Electro because she's practically trying to hold people back with lightning, which causes her to ask where is Scorpion and why isn't he helping with the containment part. And for us, that's an answer that we get rather quickly, because back over at Stark Unlimited Tower, Cassidy and Gargan are kind of in the middle of a conversation, with Cassidy telling him how what he's doing is truly setting these people free, with Cassidy making them act out violent desires that these people have been had for each other, that otherwise they would have never done. And I gotta give it to Scorpion here, because even in the face of what seems to be certain death, he just lets Cassidy know that this is gonna end for him the same way it usually does, with him losing. And Cletus tells him in response, if it is, you ain't gonna be alive to see it, only for Scorpion to then be saved by Agent Gao, who's able to shoot him free just in the nick of time. And from here, when Scorpion asks Gao how bad is it, she lets him know that Cassidy's consciousness has been contained to this area, because the network that he's using is an old Stark Escape network, which for the most part just reaches throughout New York. But on their way out, Gao then gets a call from Fei Long, who once again is the new owner of Stark Unlimited, where here not only do we find out that he's the person who's been providing Agent Gao's special division with their gear, but also he's calling to let her know that he's sending in a couple of Stark Sentinels to help her and the Cape Killers get things under control. Meanwhile, back on the ground, we see that Normie's made his way out, suited up as the Red Goblin after locking his little brother in the broom closet to keep him safe, or at least keep him away from his mom Liz, since her self-care Sundays take about 2 hours. So Normie's hoping that that's enough time for him to get Stanley back to normal and get back home to his mom. But while he's down here trying to help with the crowd control, Miles comes crashing down fast and hard, which for Normie, though he doesn't really show it or express it with his words, he's fanning out a little bit, because for everyone who took after his grandfather with the mantle of Green Goblin, it's only corrupted them. But now with him seeing Brooklyn's Spider-Man in action, up close, Normie's just like, look at this guy, he inspires greatness. And for Miles, he's just looking at Normie kind of like, who are you supposed to be? And Normie just lets him know that he's working on it because he hasn't made like an official name for himself. But mid-conversation, the two of them are attacked by Kenneth Neely, who once again is just another one of Cassidy's puppets. So really and truly, this is Cletus Cassidy, doing a bit of remote play with the attacks out here. And in this fight, Miles tries to just rip this armor and some of the symbiote off of Neely, so Cassidy makes Neely take off, with his plan being that he's gonna take Miles so high that he won't have enough air to scream, let alone breathe. And on top of that, on their way up, Cassidy's trying to bite Miles' head off, but to everyone's surprise, and especially Neely, because if we're honest, he was getting ready to die too. But to everyone's surprise, Normie grabs a hold of Neely's legs, and he uses Rascal's unique symbiote power to absorb the symbiote that Cassidy gave to Neely, effectively saving Miles and Neely, bringing them both back down to the ground. So Cassidy, who's pissed, he sends a ton of nearby civilians after Miles and Normie, only for a huge blast to come in, knocking all these people away, which initially has Miles hoping that this is the Avengers showing up. But instead, it's the two Stark Sentinels that was sent here by Fei Long to help take down Cletus Cassidy, who we then jump back over to, heading into Carnage issue 14, where now Cassidy's thinking some things over, starting with the Carnage symbiote, who's also out there becoming a god, even though the two of them define that word differently, as they both take very different approaches towards becoming a god after going their separate ways. And from here, Cassidy then thinks about his current approach, with him tapping into Stark's old network, allowing him to mind control civilians in the area, which now makes him more dangerous than ever. But now he has the issue of the Osborn kid, who has the ability to absorb symbiote matter somehow, alongside of Miles Morales, who was able to hurt Cassidy in the Extrembio, who as it turns out, that's who Cassidy's talking to right now. But with how this is done, Cassidy sees it no different than him talking to a $20 hatchet from Home Depot. Because when he's alone, he just talks to his tools, which he uses to turn everything into a mirror. And Cassidy even admits that when he feels small, he just does the same old thing. He multiplies, much like in Carnage USA and Absolute Carnage. And all of this makes them predictable. It makes them vulnerable. And he thinks perhaps that's the reason why he always loses. So he decides here that changing his tactics, that's not the solution, but instead he's just been thinking too small. He's been trying to reach millions instead of trillions. So now Cassidy plans to use these Iron Man armors to build a bigger mirror. And from here we head over to Midtown for a moment, where we find Kenneth Neely, who's been taken in by Agent Gao. And he just looks crazy here, mumbling on about how Carnage used him and Cassidy used him. And now Gao is just looking at him like, okay, this guy's broken, he's shattered, just like anything Cletus Cassidy touches. And alongside Agent Gao, we also have Fei Long here, who brought with him a nanotech that was specifically designed to remove symbiotic matter from inorganic systems. Because the way he sees it, Agent Gao's been talking about Cletus Cassidy the same way their ancestors would have spoken about the plague or genetic oddities. But to him, Cassidy's not like an active god or a plague. He's just a problem. And he's a problem that Fei Long has the solution to. So from here, he goes back to his hotel suite and he sends his commands to his Stark Sentinels. Meanwhile, in the case of Normie, he's been trying to manually absorb the Clintar sonic frequencies that Cassidy has sent to these people through the phone, and it's starting to take its toll on him, because what he's taken out from them, it's all just been building up in his symbiote. And as for Fei Long's plan of sending these Stark Sentinels after Cassidy and his Extrembio Sentinel, things get dicey rather quickly. Because as soon as the two of them confirm that they're delivering the nanotech payload, seconds later they're reporting structural integrity compromised, which then has Fei Long kind of like, okay, this ain't looking good. While at this time, when we go back to Miles, Scorpion, and Normie, they're making their way up Stark Unlimited Tower so that they can get Normie closer to Cassidy in hopes of Normie's symbiote being able to absorb just enough to sever Cassidy's connection and end this once and for all. And right now, with Cassidy fighting off both of these Stark Sentinels, We then see that Fei Long's nanotech is successfully and fully offloaded, destroying Cassidy's broadcast by cutting him off from Stark's old network, causing Cassidy to be expelled from the Stark Sentinel, and he's not happy about it one bit. And Fei Long lets Cletus know now that he's isolated, he's moving to the next step, which is elimination. And even though Cassidy doesn't know whose voice that is, remotely speaking through the systems to him, he's just yelling out all the crazy things he's gonna do to that person when he finds out whose voice that was. But now with Cassidy kicked out and weakened and looking crazy, Scorpion takes the fight right back to him, which is really nothing more than a distraction so that Normie can go after Cassidy and hopefully just incapacitate him. And this whole time, Miles is right there with them, making sure that he's still with them and asking Normie over and over again if he's sure about this. But when Normie connects to Cassidy, he says it's like staring into an endless ocean of cruelty. It overwhelms him and he tells Miles that he can't do it just before he crashes from the overload. So Miles just picks him up and he tells Scorpion that they gotta get out of there now. And he lets Normie know that it's okay, he did his best, but again, they gotta go. And with them really having nowhere to go up here, Miles tells Scorpion that they gotta just jump. And he asks Scorpion if he's ready, and Scorpion says nope. So Miles tells him, look at it this way, you can either jump out of this skyscraper or stick around and get eaten by that, which were words that worked well enough to get Scorpion moving. But it's funny because from here, with Cassidy leaving Stark Unlimited, or at least stepping outside in his new look, you got the Cletus stands making comments online like, Daddy Cletus got thick with 2 C's. But with seeing this and what happens next, this brings us to the next phase of what Cassidy was talking about when he pointed at the Iron Man armor and went on to mention that he needs to build a bigger mirror. And with Cassidy losing his access to Tony's old network, he still has the Extrembio. So as it turns out, he sent away 3 different Iron Man armors, one to Queens, one to New Jersey, one to Staten Island, each going out to one of his 3 stands, who we saw before watching the news and just hoping that Cassidy would reach out. So he approaches them all, telling them that they are his insurance, which is something that they couldn't be more excited about. And meanwhile, also in New Jersey, a very pissed off Tony Stark has been made aware of what's going on, with Cassidy using his tech to terrorize the neighborhood. So he suits up to make his way down there and make sure that Cassidy doesn't get away with this. And real quick before we go, I want to give a special thanks to all the patrons and also welcome Silas, Antoine J, and Vijay P. Thanks for signing up and helping me do what it do. And for anyone who's new here who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below where you can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.